Today's daf is daf Chof Daled. We are going to begin Chof Gimel and Beis by the Mishnah. The Mishnah says as follows: Ezeu tam ve'ezeu muad. What is the type of ox which is deemed as a tam, and what is the ox which is deemed as a muad? And as the Numugesiv explains, it's not asking what's a tam and what's a muad. We already explained many times what's a tam and what's a muad. Rather, the question is that how is it that a tam that becomes a muad could become back into a tam? So the Mishnah says, Kol she'idu boi shleisha yamim, any ox which was warned, where witness testified about it, and it gored three different times, so the halacha is, that's a muad. Muad, kol she'idu boi shleisha yamim, the Chof Gimel and Beis. Or witness testified about it, that it gored on 3 different days, so that is considered a muad. Now, the tam, how does it become back into a tam if it goes back, if you see 3 different times? In other words, let's say that ox sees 3 different times oxen and doesn't gore, so that is, it goes back into that tam. These are the words of Rabbi Yoda. Meir says no. Muad, what's considered a shur becomes a muad, that they testified about this ox that it gored 3 times, even in 1 day. The tam, and if you come up tam back even in 1 day, when kol shiatinekis b'mashmashin boy v'neger. This will be where children pet it. Let's say pet it like between the horns, because horns, as the Mefarshim will explain, irritate the animal. So where the children pet it and play with it and does not gore them, then it will become a tam. So that's the machlekes. Oh, once. Even 1 day. Even 1 day, he says there.
Even 1 day, 3 different.
He brings down over here, and where he gets it from, but even one time. So Rashi here, and it's just Rashi says, yeah, this is another thing. Okay, basically this. So just to recap. What's considered a tam, what's considered a muad? In other words, how does a muad become back to a tam? So any time that it was testified that, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it gored 3 times in 3 different days, that's considered a muad, and to come back, it has to see 3 different oxen, I guess in 3 different days, but pashtus, and does not gore, then that's considered it goes back to that tam. Rameir says no. Rameir says that if witnesses testify that it gored 3 different times, even in the same day, 3 different oxen, that's considered a muad, and to get back to tam, even in 1 day, which he says, even 1 day, as long as the child pets it and plays with them, does not gore. So I don't know about 1 time. So 1 day, because I think it might be 3 times. Anyway, the point is just the nafkamina. The point is that according to Rabbi Yehuda, it has to be 3 different days, 3 different times, and invited to come back. Tamna has to be 3 different days that it did not gore the shvarim. And Mashiach, according to Rameir, he doesn't look at the days; he looks at the times. So Rameir will tell you different times, even 1 day, and to become a tam, even in 1 day, I guess 3 different times. Okay. So now the Gemara explains, my time in the Rabbi Yehuda, what is the reason? What is the reason of the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that holds that a ox is considered muad only if it gored on 3 separate days? Why not, like you said, why not 3 different times? So Omar Abaye says like this. Rabbi Yehuda learns from the pasuk says like this. The full pasuk, it says like this. Pasuk says, if it was known that the ox was a goring ox from yesterday and the day before yesterday, and its owners was not secured. Now, let's break up this pasuk. The pasuk says it was known. So Rabbi Yehuda says like this. Tomorrow, either Taita would have just said the pasuk. Taita used the expression tomorrow. So chad. Now, tomorrow means 1 day. Mitmayil. Why does it say mitmayil with the extra mem? It teaches us today there's 2 days. Now, what does it say? Shil Shem. It says 3. Tlasa, which means 3 days that the ox gored. Now, below Yishmaneno Bailav, then the pasuk says, and the Bailav didn't guard it, Asayin, the Negicha Revius, which teaches us about a 4th Negicha. From here we learn that only for the first 3 times it's considered a mu'id, a tam, and a tam pays chatzi nezek, and only on the fourth time, then on the fourth time, then I'll have to pay a nezek shalim. That's what he says. The pasuk says, it could have said tomorrow. Why does it say mitmel? Mitmel means teaches to. Shul Shem is the third day, and then after that, then then he has to pay the full amount. Now, that's how Abaye explains. Rav Amar, Rav explains in a different way. The pasuk says, whether we would have said tomorrow, mitmel, that's chad. Doesn't matter if it would have said the words tomorrow, yesterday, or from yesterday. You can't expound on that. Rather, how do you expound on it? He says like this. Shil Shem, or the Torah says the day before yesterday, today, that indicates two. And then the pasuk says, V'lo yishmerenu, and then the pasuk says, the owner did not secure it. Ha'idna chayiv. Which means, its owner did not secure it, which is mashra the third incident of goring, is chayiv as a mu'id. What? No, not like that. Rabbi is learning it different than Abaya. Rabbi learns that till tomorrow, it's all the same thing. So rather, Shilsha means the day from yesterday refers 2 days. And V'lo yishmerenu means ha'idna chayiv. Then now, the third time, you're going to be chayiv. That's the way Rashi explains. Okay. Now we have 2 ways to explain Rabbi Yehuda. Well, you need to have 3 consecutive days, or I should say 3 different days. Either mitzad, the lashon of tamel, mitmel, or as Rabbi explains, what? It could have Rava.
Well,
Shilshay means the day before yesterday, which means 2 days, right? V'lo yishmerenu means you didn't guard it. When didn't you guard it? You didn't guard it now, and it's a third time.
the third time out.
Third time, or the third order. I should say the third day. Yeah. No, it does mean the third day. The Rabbi is explaining Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. So now the Gemara goes now to explain she does the mayor. The mayor holds that you need to have 3 negichos, you need to have 3 gorings. Even in the same day, you're going to be chayv. In other words, you don't need to have 3 you don't need to have 3 different days, 1 day. 3 times is enough. So he says like this. My timer, what's the reason why he holds this? He says, the time you learned at a brisa. I'm a mayor. A mayor says that he learns, a mayor is going to learn a kal v'chemer. This is like this. When the ox performs its goring in richik, means intervals. So then the owner is chayiv. So like this. If the ox gores at intervals, it did not go ahead and gore the same day. It gored, let's say, on a Monday, it gored then on a Tuesday, and it gored on a Thursday. So the halacha is, then it will become a mu'id, and chayiv, the owner is chayiv to pay it as a shalim. So kirim nigigaysav. So the chayda, if it performs its goring successfully, in other words, not in intervals, it gored 3 times in 1 day. Like again, doesn't it make sense that it should become a mu'id? It's just very logical. If when there's intervals, you're saying it's a mu'id, so for sure if he does it 3 consecutive times, for sure he should be a mu'id. So Amrulai, so now they told her mayor, Zava Techiach. Now, so they said to her mayor that we see by a woman who experiences a Zava, a discharge of blood, that we know Shadich, no, spend a second. Shadich Riyoisel, and her when she has intervals of her seeing blood, so Tamei she'll be tummy. However, Kirver Riyoisel, if she sees it, let's say not in intervals, then Tahir she's tar, which means it's like this. If a Zaba, the halacha is that a Zaba, a woman who experiences blood during her nida, she's a nida. Now, so for the first minute midday I saw a woman who sees blood the first 7 days, she's considered a nida. Whether she sees it the first day, the second day, third day, 6th day, she's considered a nida. Midday I saw if once a woman experiences blood, and on the 7th day it's clean, she can go to the mikveh and she's tahira. Now, Zava means, what's Zava? Zava means that after the 11 days, so let's say after 7 days, so for the next 11 days, she is in her Ziva status. The Torah says, V'yishaki Yosev Zev Dama Yamim Rabim, and the Chacham will learn now, Yamim is 2, Yamim Rabim is 3, which means that a woman will become a Zava Gedela, which is a lot of different halachics, not nowadays, but in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, a Zava Gedela has to have Shiva Nekiyah, the 7 clean days. A Zava Ketana is Shemer Hashem Keneged Yom. So she waits one day, then she goes to mikveh. A Zeva Gedela has to wait 7 clean days, and then she can go to mikveh. When? During those 11 days. So now, if a woman is going to see, in order for a woman to become a Zeva Gedela, she has to see 3 Regios in 3 consecutive days. And then she has to count Shiva Nikim, go to mikveh and bring a karber. Now, if let's say she would have seen 3 consecutive Regios in the same day. She's at 11 o'clock in the morning, she sees one Riyah. 1 o'clock, she sees another Riyah. 6 o'clock at night, she sees another Riyah. On the same day, consider 1 Riyah. 1 Riyah. She has to see in 3 Riyahs in the span of 24 hours. Each one has to be a Yom. So now, what do I see from here? I see. So what does he say? He wants to say a Bava Kamah. So what does Rabbi say? So my time to the mayor, she says, if becomes a mu'ed, so for sure, if it's consecutive, if it's should be a mu'ed. So what does he say? He says, you can't bring a Bava Kamah because I can show you by the case of a Zava that Sherach Kari Yisa, if you have 3 years in 3 different days, so then she becomes Tameh, she becomes a Zava Gedela for 7 days. But if it's Kivur Yisa, if she sees 3 years 3 times on the same day, Tahir should be Tar from Shivas, and so you can't be the Bava Kamah. So the same should apply by a shur that you cannot learn out this Bava Kamah from a shur. So we'll tell them you can't bring a raya from Zav because the pasuk says in regards to a Zav that sees a Zav that sees 3 times. There says v'zeis tia tumasa b'zevik. V'zeis, what does the zeis teach me? That Tola Kosov as Hazav many years. The Torah is telling us that in regards to Ziva or Zava, it's about looking and not about days. So in regards to Zava. Zava b'yomim. The Torah tells us by Zava is about days. So since the Torah is machal between a Zav and a Zava in regards to days, you could say that there's no reason to be metamim for 7 days by a Zava because of the pasuk, because rather it's exerts a kosim. So by Asher Amuid, which it makes a lot of sense. It makes common sense. You want to bring a case over there? That has to do with that's a Torah. That's a exerts a kosim. Okay, so now the Gemara asks, how do you know that the word v'zeis is coming to be memayit the zava from seeing, let's say, 3 consecutive on the same day? So he says, Ema l'muti zav miyamin. Maybe taka means the zav, the zeis, lamitam biyamin. So Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "V'azav zeva the azav as zeva the zach in the cave." The Torah says that one who has a discharge, whether it be a man or a woman, Makish Zachal in the cave teaches Zachal in the cave, Manakev biyamim, just like in regards to a nekeva, it's caused by sighting of multiple days, not re'iyis. Av Zachar, so the biyakar is with biyamim, is with days. So the Gemara asked, "V'lakish nekeva Zachar." So why I just not compare the female to the male? Ma Zachar re'iyis. Just as the male becomes tamei based on the number of sights, the number of re'iyis, after came in re'iyis. So my answer is on me. The Torah already says, and this, and what do you see that makes you exclude associating the tumah and purity of a woman with the number of sightings, rather than excluding the associating the tumah of men with the number of days? So he says, it makes sense that when we're dealing with sightings with re'iyis, to be mamayabiyas. When we're talking about re'iyis, well, does it make sense to exclude days? The Zois appears in the section discussing the halachas of Zav, in the context of which it mentions re'iyis and not days. And therefore, when it excludes something from these halachas and limits them specific cases, we will exclude it from being associated dafka with re'iyis and not yamu. Okay, that's what it was. Now the Gemara brings a brisa, which brings a machlekes in regards to our mission. Tanabano, we learned in the brisa. The brisa says, Ezel mu'ed, what's considered a mu'ed? Kol she'id v'shloshi yamim, any time that they were made that the ox gored 3 days. And v'tom, and when does it become a tam? Shu'atinekis, when mashmim bebe negech, this is when the children pet it, and nevertheless it is not gored. These are the words of Rabbi. Shimon says no. Mu'ed, what's a mu'ed? Kol she'id v'shlosh famim, and they testify that it gored 3 times, even in the same day. And the Chacham who spoke about 3 days only in regards to intervals, which means like this. In order for an ox to become back a tam, the ox has to refrain from goring on 3 separate days. So each of these additional views on this subject combine aspects of both the opinion mentioned in the Mishnah of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Okay, because it's not very clear. It's like he takes the Mishnah was very clear about the same day. Rav Shimon is coming and saying, yeah, kol she'ida by shaloisha pamim, but when it comes to become back in that tam, that's shloish yom. So he's in between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman, halacha can Rabbi Yehuda be'mud. The halacha is like the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda be'mud. They become a mud dafka when it's 3 days. Why? Sha'arei Rabbi Yossi Meidalei. Because Rabbi Yossi agrees to him. Halacha, as we said, halacha can be Meir be'tam, and halacha is like a Meir by a tam. Rabbi Yossi Meidalei. Because Rabbi Yossi concedes the opinion on that issue. But they Rabbi Nachman, so Rabbi tells Rabbi Nachman, they remember halacha to the Meir be'mud. Why? You should say the opposite, that the halacha is according to the opinion of Meir concerning the halachas of mud. Why should Shimon Meidalei? Shimon agrees to him. Allah can be Yehuda b'is tam. Why should Shimon make the like? Because Shimon agrees to him. I hold in accordance to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi nimuki imay. As Rabbi Yossi, his analysis was with him. In other words, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so now the question is like this. Now the Gemara is going to go back to the Yisrael of a shape. They asked the Shaila. That raises the Shaila. So he says that halacha is like Rabbi Yossi said. Yeah, days. Yeah. Okay. Tana Ibaylo, they asked the Shaila. Shloishi Yom Diktani Liyudei Torah. The 3 days that the Mishnah teaches in the context of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, and you need to have 3 different days with regards to the Eidos needed to make it a mu'ed, are they needed in order to Shloishi Yom Diktani Liyudei Torah? Is it to render the ox a mu'ed? Or the Yehudi Gabra, or they need it in order to forewarn the man who owns the ox, to inform him that he needs to take precaution to keep it from causing further harm. So that's his question. The 3 days that we said by Sher Mu'id, is it in order to make the Sher Mu'id, that in 3 days will be a muksik to gore, or is it to make the Bala Sher Chayiv? Now, frankly, one obvious question, the Mai Nafkamina. What would be the difference? What is the practical difference between the two? If you say it's going on the Chetzah, you're going the Gavra, so all nice terms, but what's the practical difference? So he says, the practical difference will be in a case where 3 groups of witnesses came to Beis Din on one day, each testifying about a separate instance of goring caused by the ox on 3 separate days. So you have like this. You have 3 different sets of witnesses came on one day, and they testify on 3 different begichos that the 3 sets of witnesses testified that this animal that was gored 3 different days. So that 3 different days, 3 times. Now, if you said it becomes a mu'id with the edus of with 3 days. So if you say it has to do with the vort of that the ox becomes a mu'id, so miyayid. So that will become a mu'id. Why? Because the Eidim clearly testified that it gored 3 days. But if you say it has to do with the man, it will not become a mu'id with this Eidus. Why? Because the owner of the shir could say, me, only now they warned me to guard my shir. And the Torah says that you need to have hasra between 3 different negiches, 3 different days. So my salach is, what's the din? So the Gemara answers and says, so what's the din? So it says, Tashma come and you bring a raya for the brisa, Ein asher nasa mu'id, an ox does not become a mu'id, until witnesses testify against it and in the presence of his owner and in the presence of the beis din. Now if they testified against it in the beis din but not in the presence of the owners, or or in front of the owners but not in front of the beis din, Ein nasa mu'id, it will not become a shir mu'id. It has to testify against it in the presence of court and in the presence of Sion and Beis Din and Sion in front of the owner. Now, furthermore, if two witnesses testified against an ox concerning its first incident of the goring, and two other witnesses testified against it concerning the second incident, and now you have two other witnesses testified against it concerning a third incident. In other words, not that one set saw three different giches. One testament we saw it goring at 11 o'clock. Another set of witnesses comes and says we saw two sets of other witnesses. We saw it at 2 o'clock. And a third set of witnesses comes and says we saw it at 6 o'clock. So the halacha is, Harikan Shalish Edis. There are three separate testimonies here, but they are considered one with regards to rendering it as Edis Hazama, as Edim Zemer. Now, Nimtzas, so the halacha is like this. Nimtzas Kasli Sheina Zememis. If, let's say, the first set of witnesses determined to be a Edim Zemer, so Harikan Shtei Edis, so there are two testimonies remaining here that claim the ox gored. So the owner has to pay a chatzi nezek on the damage in each case. But the owner of the ox is exempt from having to pay the full cost of the damage, and they themselves are exempt from paying the owner what he would have to pay with their testimony, as they testified only concerning the first incident of the goring. And the ox would not have been deemed mu'id on the basis of that testimony alone. So very interesting. What are you saying, sorry?
On they punish with the
yeah, so how do you... Right, exactly. So how do I look at it? With the fact is, with the first cast, along with the other two, he would have been considered a mu'id. So you helped to become the ox to be a shar mu'id. On the other hand, it's the first set of witnesses, with their testimony alone, there are only two left, which is still a town. And they're only the first witness, the only first set of witnesses. So that's why, in that case, he would be. So again, so the owner of the ox is exempt from paying the full cost of the damage only chatzi nezek. And the Edim Zemer are potter. Now, what if the second group would have been Zemeres? So there's only one testimony remaining here that claims the ox scored, which is the third. And therefore, at this point, the owner of the ox is exempt from having to pay the full cost of the damage, and the Edim Zemer don't have to pay the full cost of the damage as well. So let's see. If the third group of witnesses were also determined to be now Edim Zemer, so then halach is kulan chayavin. All the witnesses would be chayav. Why? But the third group is chayav to pay the owner of the animal the damage of, let's say, chatzi nezek, because they tried to make him pay for the third incident of goring. And all three groups have to share the payment on the other half of the damage of the final incident that they tried to charge him with classifying as a mu'id. So, it seriously explains. The third cast will have to pay chatzi nezek because what's his kasher zaman, what he tried to do. And then they have to split the difference of the other nezek, the chatzi nezek, because all of them trying to make him Edim Zemer. That's what the Torah says. And he should do to him as he has conspired to do to his brothers. So now the Gemara says, if you say that the purpose of the testimony is to render the ox a mu'id, so then Shaper, the Brisa, works very well. As according to this opinion, it can be said that all the witnesses came on the same day, and therefore they were all certainly aware of each testimony. So the first set of witnesses shares the responsibility of the testimony of the last group, because they were basically all co-witnesses in the effort to make this person a boy.
For whether or not it cuts out the
Yeah. So we had
after the man, you want to the fact put it to the body, not to mention with that big the ox would have bored.
Let's go to the owner. Whoever you try to testify against, yeah. Okay, so now let's get back to the verse. So now,
proof of the got without time down here, like should be hell. As English or what? Something costing us a big out.
Right.
To able to bring them.
Let's see again. Now, but if you say that the Torah required 3 days, and you need to forewarn between every single goring one to another, so therefore you must say that you can't say the case of the years that they came in 1 day. So how is it possible to Machai the first groups on Kasher Zaman? That's the question. But if you say that the witness came to forewarn the man, in other words, the caution to safeguard the animal from causing harm, so then they must come on 3 separate days. So the first witnesses say, that we know after 3 days these other witnesses were going to come and testify against the animal. Therefore, it must be that the case of the Bryce is one where the 3 groups of witnesses all came on the same day. And if that's so, the purpose of the testimony must be to make it a mu'id. So I see from here that even if you come on the same day, then it must be on the same day. Okay. So Amar Rav says. Okay, so Amar Rav says, Amris l'shmaitz l'gemein Rav Kana. I said this halacha before Rav Kana, and he replied to me in the response. I say, and does it work out well to say that they are coming to make the ox wood, even in the case where all witnesses arrived and based on the same day? Let the last one say, from where would we know that all those standing in Beis will come to testify about the ox? We came to make this person chayav v'chatzi nezek for the damage that the animal caused. We're not responsible for the attempt to pay nezek shalom because of the first 2 witnesses. So my answer is the meramzi ramazi. It must be the case. It concerns a situation where the different groups of witnesses were observed signaling to each other, and therefore it's clear that they were aware of each other's testimony, and they came to the basis for this person. Rashi says, the case where all they came in succession. In other words, following one another. Therefore, it's clear that the latter witnesses are aware of the former. Ravina says, in the case, the witnesses said that they were acquainted. They knew the Baal Asher. So, in the case where the witnesses said that they knew with the owner, they were acquainted with the owner of the boring ox, where they're not familiar with the ox itself. In other words, they were coming to Beis Din to make the ox mamuid, as the witnesses are not able to identify the goring ox, and they would not be able to hold its owner chayav to pay chatzi nezek, as this payment is paid only from the goof of the shade. So therefore, the only purpose of their testimony would be to hold the owner chayav to pay the nezek shalom for the 3rd incident, as this payment is made from, as we know, the difference between a tam and a mu'ad. A tam pays mikufi of the sheikh. A mu'ad pays ma'aliyah. So, but if they were not familiar with the ox, so how can they make him a mu'ad? So the Gemara answers the Amri. They said to the animal's owner, Teda nagachno islach bevarka. You have a goring ox amongst your cattle. And therefore you need to safeguard all of your cattle. They knew that one of the oxes of Ilda, but they didn't know which one. Okay. They asked the Shalah before the Chachamim, in the case of one who incites another's dogs against another. 3rd person. So a person now went and raced on this dog to go and go attack. What? He incites. He incites another person's dog against another person, a 3rd person. And now he injured. What's the halacha? So this is Meshase, the one who incites the animal against him. Certainly a potter, since he did not cause the damage directly, and neither did his property. So the child is Baal Kelev Mai. What's the halacha with regard to the owner of the dog? Can the owner of the dog say to the injured party, what did I do? What did I do to the dog? The or perhaps you can say to him, since you're aware that if others incite your dog is prone to be affected by the incitement of the attacking, you should have regarded it in your possession. Since you do not, you are chayav for the damage and the injuries it causes. So that's the question. So Amar Rav Zera says like this: Lashma coming here from the following brayso. Vitam says, and an ox reverts to being a tam. Shatinei case in mashrishin bay, which means that the children pet it, but enegech does not gore. Now, which is mashma onegech. If when the child does pet it, of course, then chayav, the owner would be chayav to pay for the damage. An ox that gores because children pet it can be likened to the person who gores because it was decided to do so. And nevertheless, what does the Mishnah say? The owner is chayav to pay for it. Right? So my answer is no. So Amar Abai says, does the Brisa say if a gourd is chayiv? Perhaps that's not what the Brisa means. It means that if it gored, and that if it gored, then le'av tam. It doesn't refer back to a tam. But the owner is not chayiv for any damage caused by that goring because the children decided the animal to do so. And therefore nothing can be conclusively learned from this price. Tashma, come and bring another ayah from the Mishnah Sanhedrin. Shisubayas akelev. If one incited a dog against another person, Shisubay nachash. So the halacha is, or Shisubay nachash, or he incited a snake against another person, but he's butter. Now, my la pater mishasav chai ba'akelev. What does this mean? The person who incited the dog against him is pater. The owner is chayiv, which is like ema pater after mishas, to say that even the one who incited the animal against him is pater as well as the owner. So Abai says, Abai says this. Even if you want to say mishas kabash chayiv, even if you want to go to Chumrah and say, a person who incites the dog of another against yet another person, nevertheless, so he's chayiv. She so ba'atz, she so hu ba'atzmai potter. Now, so even if you want to say that the dog, that if you want to say that the one who incites the dog of another person is chayiv, nevertheless, if he incited the dog himself, the dog bit the one who incited the attack. So the shaila is, it's a potter. Why? My time. What's the reason? Why is he potter? It's called a mishana, because we have called a mishana. Anyone who deviates from the normal behavior in his actions, if another came along afterwards and deviates from the norm with regards to the action the first has done and thereby causes damage to him, so Allah is potter, is chayiv. So since this individual deviated from the normal behavior and incited the dog against himself, the owner of the dog is not responsible for any damage the dog causes to him as a result. Although generally speaking, any time a dog bites, it is in itself a deviation from its typical behavior and something from which his owner would normally be held chayiv. Now, the Papa says, it was stated in the name of Rish Lakish, and according to your opinion, that anybody who's mishana from its actions, if another came along and afterwards it deviates from the norm with regards to the action the first one was done, causes the damage, the one who causes the damage is potter. Why? If there are two cows that are shus arabim, and achas or achas malachas, we have this already once. One was prone in the street and the other was walking. And now, if the walking cow kicked the prone cow, it's p'tura, but if the prone cow kicked the walking cow, chayiv is chayiv. Why? The svar is, and since it's typical behavior for cows to walk in Rosh Hashanah, and now this the prone cow deviated from his behavior, so even if the walking cow also acted atypically and kicked the cow, the owner is still potter. So Amalei Rava said back to the Papa, he says it's not according to my opinion. I would have held the owner of the walking cow chayiv in that case. Why? Because we tell him that it is true that you have the right to tread me to tread. It's true that you have the right to tread on me in the public domain. So it's true because he said I would have held the owner chayiv. Why? Because it's my opinion, when we say to him on behalf of the cow, it's true that you have the right to tread me in Rosh Hashanah, but you don't have the right to kick me. Therefore, Rav and Rish Lakish's opinion are not exactly the same.